A little bit about, you write about the Hungarian Hunk. Great name. Who was the Hungarian Hunk and what was his story?
So he's another phenomenal person I write about. Actually, start the prologue with his story. He was a Hungarian Jew, very acculturated. I don't think he practiced at all. Like the others, makes his way to the UK as a teenager. He's very sort of aristocratic. I think he goes to Cambridge or something, and he starts moving in all these aristocratic circles. And he's selected to serve in one of the sort of special units doing special ops until they realize that he's an enemy alien Jewish guy. I don't know. They would never say Jewish, but he's considered an enemy alien. He's selected for this unit. Then he's immediately kicked out of it because he's an enemy alien. He goes through the same kind of story as everybody else. And while this is all happening, he falls in love with Miriam Rothschild of the Rothschilds. And she's incredible and deserves her own book. At this point, when they fall in love with each other, she's working for the Enigma campaign at Bletchley Park doing code breaking because she's so brilliant. She ends up being a very famous naturalist after the war. She's a very proud Jewish woman. She makes it so that her family's estate houses Jewish refugees. And she falls for this guy, George Lane, who's incredibly handsome. Like you said, they call him the Hungarian hunk. They secretly marry each other because if she marries him publicly, she will lose her citizenship because he's an enemy alien. So they marry secretly. Brian Hilton Jones allows her to come with George Lane to the training and live there. So she's there, and she did some great oral histories about the ex-troop that I wrote about in the book. One of them, in one interview, she talked about being with the men, and she said they were nothing like the ordinary soldiers. These guys were talking about Schopenhauer. I mean, these were very acculturated men, and she loved these guys, and she took care of them. So he's married to her, and he's the second in command to Brian Hilton Jones. So he's the one who goes with Brian Hilton Jones to select the men who'll be part of the ex-troop, does the interviews, is the head of the training of the men, and he's tougher and stronger and more capable than like any of them. And then what ends up happening is that Brian Hilton Jones is contacted by the British military in the weeks before the D-Day landings to say, we need you to undertake a high-risk special operation. And once Hilton Jones hears about the operation, he thinks, I'm going to have George Lane do this. So the operation is that somebody needs to land on a little rubber dinghy on the Normandy coast, because there's a rumor out there that the Germans have laid mines along the coast that are not the standard Teller mines. There's something different. They have some kind of special weapon. So the job of this person, it's really extraordinary, is to land there and ideally bring back a mine or take photos to figure out what kind of mines are laid there. Have they created a new weapon? George Lane is selected because he's brave and he's capable, but also he was on the Hungarian water polo Olympic team. So he's very capable with water. So he is sent on a dinghy to get this intelligence. He's sent with another commando who's not Jewish and part of a different unit. He lands the first night. He comes back and he says, he scubas and he says, this is a standard Teller mine. You guys can do D-Day as you want. They don't believe him. They say that's not what their reports say. They send him a second time. He comes back a second time. And one of the reports says he actually brings back a mine. And he says, it's standard. You guys can do D-Day. They send him a third time. The third time he's actually captured with the other guy who's with him. They're sent, I tell the whole story in the book because it's so crazy. And they're sent to this castle, right? And he's pretending to be Welsh, and he knows that if he does a Welsh accent, it will hide the German accent because Welsh accents are different and maybe the Germans won't recognize it. And he's sent to be interrogated in this castle. And the main thing he can't let anyone know is that he's in this ex-troop because they don't want anyone to know about the special force that they have. So he's sent into the library and he is told to sit down. and he's sent to be interviewed, to his complete shock, by the head of the German High Command, who walks in and starts interrogating him. And he's pretending to have a Welsh accent. And he does not give the game away, but he's not sent to be killed as a prisoner of war. He's sent to a camp for prisoners of war officers. Once he gets there, he says, I know where the German High Command is. I know where their castle is. And they get the intelligence back to London. And so he stays in there for the rest of the war. But after the war, he's given a military medal, which I cite in the book, which says, but for the actions of George Lane, D-Day would not have gone on as planned, because he was the one who gathered the intelligence that let them know that they could do the landings. It's really incredible. And Miriam, she's, by the way, she's pregnant during all of this. So it's an incredible story of heroism. But also what I keep trying to point out in the book is the importance of these guys in sort of making sure that the Nazis would be beaten.